Yeah,
Let me
otherwise,
just say, it
yeah,
says,
we'll just
okay,
remember.
then we'll probably have a couple people coming in, and I really don't want to, waste any time to introduce my good friend Anne, who you can already see on screen waving to you if you've got the group view over there. And I'm very excited about this session. So I don't know if any of you have heard of Anne or seen her work out there. I've met Anne, through good friends, but also in this industry of teaching, because I do a lot of teaching online, and so does Anne. But Anne doesn't just teach online. She's also the author of the best-selling book called The Wealth Chef, and she's also one of the anchor hosts of a TV show in the UK on their famous Channel 4 called Save Well, Spend Better. And she's got these most amazing programs helping people not only with wealth creation, but also wealth resilience. And of course, you know that this session from the invite that went out is all about the 5 pillars of wealth resilience. And I guess whatever else Anne feels the urge to share with us here today. And, I spoke to Anne, and Anne was so excited the fact that we actually get to connect here on Zoom in kind of an intimate setting like this. So before I hand over to Anne, let me give a couple of kind of house rules, so to speak. If everyone can keep your microphones on mute, unless of course you're going to be speaking, that would be great. And I think most of you already are. So thank you for that. And what, Anne is going to be giving of herself, and you're going to see, and if you've seen Anne's work before, she really gives of herself in these sessions. And I know as a speaker that there's nothing worse than feeling like you're speaking to a wall. So I'm going to ask everyone if you can turn your cameras on so that Anne can actually ask you questions, get feedback from you. If Anne asks you something and the answer is yes, you can give a big thumbs up like this so she can actually see your response. Or if it's no, you can give a thumbs down. And of course, we're talking about financial resilience, and Anne and I were having a conversation about how it is a bit of a sensitive topic. And I was telling Anne that fortunately in EO and EOA, we do have a culture of confidentiality and leaning into any kind of vulnerability around these kinds of topics. So, obviously, if you have any questions at all, in the chat bar, just type a big capital Q with your question, and either Anne will pick that up if it's relevant to what she's speaking about, or at the end, we'll come into some Q&A. If you have an experience share, you can also just type share in big caps in the chat bar as well. And towards the end, we can obviously try and get to as many experience shares as possible. So with that said, and without any further ado, please help me welcome Anne. Thank you for joining us, Anne.
Woo! Thank you, and thank you, Gillian, and thank you for all of you giving this time to just come and talk about this topic of money, which weaves through every aspect of our lives. It weaves through our sense of security, our sense of well-being, our sense of identity. And it has become such an entangled and interwoven element that it's just great to be able to have some time to talk about it. So I'm going to share some of my experience, some of the stuff that I teach, and also hopefully we can just start having some open conversations. So thank you for making this time for coming to talk about it's a way more taboo subject for most people than sex. We can always talk about sex if we want afterwards, but let's talk about money first. It's far more fun. So Gillian, what do you want? Should I dive in?
Yes, let's dive in. Sorry, when you first said, what do you want? I thought you were asking me if we want to talk about sex or money. Let's talk about money. That's why people are here. And go ahead. Obviously what I'd love to know is you've got this background talking about wealth creation, and now obviously you're talking a lot about wealth resilience as well. And I think that there's no better time than, with what's happening in the world around coronavirus. So I thought maybe a good place to start is if you want to go through those pillars and take it away. I'm sure that if any questions come up, we'll go there, but I'm going to give it all into your control.
Perfect. So just a tiny bit of background. I did not pop out the womb knowing anything about money. I was taught, like most people, work hard, get a good job, maybe this stuff will sort itself out. Don't really talk about money. It was either a bit dirty, taboo, or you seem greedy, or it just wasn't the stuff that you did. And so the start of my money journey was about working hard, getting a good job. I studied engineering. I thought that would keep me safe. And through the journey, I discovered there was a very big difference between earning money and creating wealth. Huge difference between earning money and creating financial security and resilience and base. And most of us are never taught this stuff. We're not taught it in business schools. We're taught how to bring revenue in, we're taught how to earn, and we're taught how to spend. So how to bring it in and how to get rid of it as fast as possible. And we're told that our identity and our significance and our sense of well-being and success is so interwoven between those two aspects, how they flow in and how it flows out and what it flows to. And all of those things are just devastatingly bullshit and keep us away from actually getting into right relationship with money, understanding its role in our life, what it's meant to do. At the end of the day, for us to truly get to express and be present with our greatest selves in our lives, because it's meant to serve, not enslave. And so it was in a journey of going through all sorts of really messy dysfunction with money, getting into debt, climbing out of it, not knowing what investing was, a lot of shame and confusion that I should be doing this better, that I discovered this path that there is an and where is this path of wealth, the financial resilience, what is that relationship, and how to actually create sustainable wealth. And so just where did I come out of this? I got to a point where, through stumbling onto essentially these 5 core elements or pillars, and applying them consistently in my life, I was able to achieve a place where I have enough assets. So we're going to talk about assets a lot. Yes, I'm an ass girl because it's all about the base. That there's enough assets in my life that can do the work and for me, really understanding the business of money. And we'll talk, I know you all got your own businesses, so do I, really shifting from believing that more money would give me freedom, because that is the first most devastating lie or myth that we can be chasing after, is believing it's more revenue or money, to shifting and understanding it's assets that create freedom. So I got to a place where I have these different assets in different asset classes that grow for me, capital growth, earn income, and create and give me my ultimate freedom, which is the freedom of choice, freedom to do what I want with my time, with my energy, with my sheer life force. And this is my dream and goal for everybody. And this is now what I do through the business, my platform called The Wealth Chef, through my speaking, my TV show, and all else is helping other people get to this place where we've got this supporting you, both in your business and in your personal life, because they're so interwoven. And so this really brings me to the very, very first pillar, which is management and leadership. Actually, leadership and management, because leadership has to come first and then management. And we go, but Anne, what does that got to do with financial leadership? What does financial management look like? And really want to start that as business owners, it's very often easy for us to put the business first, and then we sort of see ourselves as a cascade. Our needs, responsibilities, our life comes second to the business. But actually, in terms of leadership, we have to start with ourselves as the greatest business we each have. Do you approach your life as the life called Your Life Inc.? Are you the CEO and the chief sort of financial officer and freedom officer of your life? And what does that look like? And so the leadership in your life is getting really clear. What the bleep do you want? What do we each want from this one crazy, amazing, juicy, crazy life? And this COVID lockdown, crazy, weird experience that we've all been in. I think if it's one of the many things it's given us is a real opportunity to strip away the noise, the busyness, and get to that essentialism. Is what do you want your life to be about? What do you want to experience? What's the essentialism that you're going to take a stand for? And how are you designing the relationship with where your money goes, what you're spending your resources on? And we've really only got 3 primary resources to use to create wealth in our lives, and wealth in this broader sense, which is our money, our time, and our energy. And it's how we use those 3 brings together the results in our life. So this leadership is vital in the life, getting clear on what the hell we want. Because if we don't know what that is, we cannot even start directing our finances. We can't even start directing these resources at anything. And so then everybody else's agendas, then quite frankly, any old path will do. And so in our businesses, are we really clear in the leadership what it is that you're wanting to create? Because it's so easy to get caught into believing that it's just more revenue, that it's just to get bigger. because we've got to get really clear, what is it that you want from your business? And it's not going to look like anybody else's. It's going to be your unique set. And so many businesses that might have looked super successful on the outside by parameters of maybe revenue and certain sort of consumption, actually we've seen in this time were not sustainable. Their balance sheets were completely screwed. And so there was not this ability to see through these different tough times, but also this time's really stripped away to see, well, were they businesses that you actually want to be running? What do you want to do with it? So this leadership is vital, that you've got to have a vision for your own life and for your business, which is really clear. Because without that, everything else that comes on in these remainder of these pillars talk to that. So leadership of your own financial life. Do you know what your financial targets are? Do you have a financial freedom number? Do you know what that looks like? Do you know what is the actual lifestyle that those assets, you want those assets to be providing for you? And, or are you caught into what the validation of external side of what maybe society, your parents, magazines have told you that success looks like? And so it's an extraordinary, deep inquiry, and that takes huge courage to also take a stand for your own vision, your own truth. Because only once you've got that in place, then you can put the management in place. Because management is about what are the systems, the processes, the automations, the resources you put in place in order to bring that vision to life. And in your financial systems, you need financial management mechanisms in place. And that means you've got to know what's going on in your money world. In your personal life, you've got to know what's flowing in and from where, and what is the quality of that inflow. How much of that is generated by active earning? How much is residual? How much is ongoing? How much is passive earned income? So you start getting a sense of the different qualities and flavors of that inflow. Because if it's all actively earned income, that is, you are stopping and you stop, that inflow stops, you are vulnerable. And you need to have different sources of inflow coming in. And then you've got to know, where is that money going to? And this is a huge shift as well. Many people, we get so fixated on this revenue, this inflow. If I can just earn more, if I can just get that next contract, if I can get that next deal in our business and our personal life, that we become slaves and addiction to the revenue, the income. But there's a lovely saying, you know, the top line or revenue, income is vanity. It is the mark to math. Somebody's got such a 7-figure business, an 8-figure business. So what? If it costs you 8.5 figures to have an 8-figure business, you ain't got a business and there's no success in it. So the most important part of also this leadership and management is knowing what is the outflow. Your wealthy life, your financial resilience and your financial well-being actually happens at where the money flows out of your life, because that's what are you exchanging the money for. And so there's amazing opportunity right now to get really clear, both your business and your personal life, to spend some time at the back door. Where is the money flowing out to? How much of that outflow is just unconscious because we've just been too busy? It was easy just to have that flowing out. What are those fixed overheads? How can we reduce those? Because every element of the fixed overhead we can reduce is equivalent to about 10 times the income. And so we really can make huge shifts in our financial well-being by spending some time really understanding how much of that outflow is just unconscious. Do we just thought, you need to have it and isn't questioned? How much is truly there that provides the structural base and security and opportunity and ability to live? So those are, what's the bottom level of Maslow's hierarchy expenses that provide food, shelter, access to opportunity in your business and your personal life? And then which are the expenses that actually align to what you really want? Which are the ones that move the needle of joy, of wealth, of being and opportunity in your business and your life? And then strip away all the shit that doesn't serve. And so spending some time here is super important. And then putting in place automated systems to manage that money, simple allocations of, are you ensuring that all the money that comes in your life is allocated in different ways to short-term, medium-term, and longer-term needs? The first aspect of money that flows into your business life and then flows into your personal life, it falls under this concept of pay yourself first. It's one of the most touted phrases in financial areas, in personal development, but it's one of the most misunderstood. And generally, as humans, we're also rewarded to pay ourselves last in our time, our energy, because that's being nice, that's being generous. But also in businesses, we can end up going, oh, we'll forget to take revenue out of the business. It can be very intoxicating to just keep that money in. Are you taking money out of that business and making sure you're putting it into other assets? Are you paying yourself adequately? And then once that money comes into your life, how much of that are you allowing yourself to keep and convert into assets? Your freedom tax, basically what I call it, needs to be the first tax you pay before SARS, before anybody else. It's that, are you putting your energy to what you say is important to you? And if financial well-being, if freedom, having choice is that, you need to represent that by what you do with your money, because it really represents part of that energy of where you direct stuff. So this is about having a system. It's also about giving time for your money. Do you have a regular money date for your personal finances? In your business, do you actually carve out time to not just have a meeting with the accountant and say, shit, I got to pay that this month, but actually look at what are the things that are driving the needles? What are those products? What are those activities that actually make a difference? You need to spend time looking at money flow, what's going in. So that is pillar number one, leadership and management. Know what the bleep you want, and then have systems and processes around to make the most of it. And just the last sort of piece on this, if we think about leadership, that visionary, deciding where we want to go, money is the ultimate employee, but most people neglect it. And they work hard to bring it in. It's like going out, finding this amazing recruiting process, bringing them in, luring them, and then you ignore it. You don't give it a KPI. You don't tell it what you want. You don't manage it. You don't see how it's performing. So if you also just treat the money in your life, personal life, and your business as one of the most extraordinary employees, team members that just wants to work, are you actually giving it that leadership, that time, its tasking, which is just so key. So pillar number one, yes.
That was, so I just to reiterate a couple of things that I really resonated with, and I absolutely love that. I mean, just to the way, I mean, your last point about personifying money almost, and to say give it your leadership, because we're all entrepreneurs, we're all leaders in business, but it's so great to see it in that way. And just a couple of things that resonated really with me. Our only resources, time, money, and energy, and paying ourselves first, not just in money, but in all three of those things, I think is so valuable. And something else that I also just want to maybe mention again of what you mentioned here, because I talk about this when I teach negotiation. People don't realize that when it comes to an expense, like you mentioned, it's like, you've got to do a huge amount of turnover to actually have added that same amount to your bottom line. And that was something that when I teach that in negotiation, people, it's such a simple thing. It's so easy to miss. And when you mentioned it there, it just absolutely resonated. So I wanted to mention that. So thank you. And
so key, because you know what, looking at the back end, looking at the space can feel boring. You know, the reality as entrepreneurs, of creators, it's sexy to go out and create. But let's create some time for that back end. And so Andrew's asked a question. He says, it's not important to initially be reinvesting into your business as paying yourself first when you're starting up. You don't have the funds to get your business off the ground. It's an obvious question, but please, could you speak to this? Absolutely. And so this is your question is the perfect segue to pillar number 2, which is you need to be building assets. And this is about changing the focus from top line revenue to balance sheet. If you are not building assets in your personal life and in your business, you will forever be living on a pogo stick, ever in the churn, the hustle, and never actually create a business, as opposed to just maybe a cash flow machine, and never actually ever be able to create true financial resilience and financial freedom. And so when we first started in business, one of the most devastating and dangerous things that happens, whether somebody is an employee, however money flows into life, the most common story I get for people of why they're not investing in other assets outside of their business is, and I'm just waiting to get my business to a certain level, then I'll start looking at that. I just want to get my kids through school, then I'll start looking at this. This when then as a reason for not starting to build up a consistent base of small different asset classes working for us is the most intoxicating. It's one of the easiest reasons and socially acceptable. All the other entrepreneurs will go, hell yeah, reinvest in your business, do that. So this is really important, and it's very easy for us to get caught into this. So when we're first starting the business, it's also easy to get caught into almost a martyrdom or a self-sacrifice. I'm not saying pay and take out a crazy salary to start off. You've got to make it sustainable and this is about really getting clear on your expenses. But if you are not including you as something, a cost to your business, and making sure that that cost is represented and taken out, some of it could be reinvested back in as a director's loan back in the business, but you've got to get into a habit. And this is habits. It's really important to understand wealth and financial is created by habits more than anything else. And learning how to get money flowing, firstly out of businesses and then into other asset classes, is first and foremost in habit. And one that many people are terrified to start because it can be so intoxicating to defer it and believe that there's other ways. So it's more of a habit, less than the amount of money that's taken out. It's going, I am doing this habit. Some of the money comes out of the business, goes into your life, and it gets put into other assets, even when it might not feel sexy. And so growing assets, there are 4 core asset classes, and that we need to be building up. And I talk about an investment pyramid, and I could speak an entire hour just on investment pyramids, but essentially your first asset class is stocks and shares. And as business owners, it's super sexy that you can also own a slice of somebody else's business, amazing businesses all around the world, without having to take much risk, without having to pitch up for a day's work, without any of the hassle. And you benefit from the capital growth and the income. So every asset is an asset only because, one, it can grow in value. So there has to be a capital growth element. And the second element, it has the ability to generate income. It's those 2 components that make something an asset. So your home is not an asset. Your car is not an asset. Your shoe collection is not an asset, even though I've tried to argue that, but it's not. It has to have these 2 parameters. And many people can be afraid of stock market investing, or they see it's hugely volatile, but it is the sexiest and the simplest asset class to also utilize for tax efficiency, getting money out of your business, and really building up this broad base of diversification and asset allocation, which is super, super important. So stock market investing, really key. Second asset class is investment property. So this is also called fixed assets. This is anything tangible, something that you can touch. Biggest part of it is investment property. As I've said, it's not your home. And this is one of the most dangerous things. We were also taught that, that big home that might look good and the goal is to keep growing it and that's success. It is not an asset. It is absolutely a liability. So this is other property, industrial, commercial, residential, everything. It could even be from shipping containers. It can be multi-use, but it's this huge asset class, which is super sexy. Again, grows in capital value and can generate income, but it's also the easiest asset class to use leverage on, and we'll get to that in pillar number 3, called borrowing. So you want to also be looking at how to invest and utilize that asset class, because what you're building up is a portfolio separate from you of different diversified investments that can operate in different markets. Some will go up and down, because part of resilience, part of having a solid supportive base from your money investments, is having something that stabilizes in different markets and different ups and downs. So that's asset class number 2. Asset class number 3 is low input businesses. So many of you are hopefully creating exactly that, low input business. And I hate the word passive, because if you're going to be passive in your life, you ain't going to get much in it. And there is no such thing as passive income. Low input, because part comes back to pillar number 1, leadership. You're wanting businesses where they are driven by systems, processes, other people, mechanisms, that do the value exchange, and you benefit from the leverage of that. But you've still got to be giving it leadership. You've still got to be directing it. So this whole asset class is enormous, and many of you are building that. So also you need to ask yourself a question and get really, really clear that is your business actually an asset that you are growing? Meaning it's growing in capital value and it can generate income without you having to be actively involved in it? Or is it a cash flow machine? And there's nothing wrong with having a business that's a cash flow machine, because then it's even more important you're taking money out and putting into other assets. But many people think they have a business when they have a cash flow machine. They couldn't necessarily sell it. And so it's super important. You need to know what is your business. And if you want it to be an asset, what are you creating in terms of the systems, the process, the tools behind it? And this whole business asset class, you can have multiple small businesses. You can have digital businesses. You know, Gillian and I use a lot of automated digital processes, systems, tool. I've got this huge factory in the sky that basically runs and delivers most of my content and my value. So it just churns away. To bricks and mortar side, to royalties, to licensing. There's so many different areas here, but really a key asset class. So this starts forming three sides of this investment pyramid. But the most stably structure in the whole world, and this is the civil engineer in me, the geek, comes in, is a four-sided pyramid with this great big juicy base. And the fourth side of this pyramid is ourselves. We are our greatest assets. So I so want to honor you for being here, because it tells me you already see that if we aren't expanding ourselves, our own capacity to manage and lead who we are, our lives, getting really clear over and over, what are those blocks internally, externally, that prevent us from going out of our comfort zone, to stretching ourselves, to learning, you know, what is just the practical skills we need to learn about investing, about running the business, but also the inner game, the peer group. Because what I know with absolute certainty from my own life, and now having worked with literally thousands and thousands of people to help them create their own financial freedom, is that our wealth and our financial stability, our financial relationship, and our ability to really manage and get our assets working for us only expands in direct proportion to our ability to expand and grow ourselves. And so that's why we have to do this proportionately. And so this is the key pillar next, is, am I creating assets in my business? And I'd love you to go from today, or maybe even think now, are you investing in different asset classes outside of your business? And then in your business, how much of your time is being spent creating assets rather than just trying to generate that quick cash crop? Are you planting those trees that can feed you over and over again? And those might be your systems, your processes, your network, your infrastructure. What is that are truly assets versus just quick cash generating activities? And that is the difference. And I think in a big tumultuous time like now, it's such an opportunity to strip away and see, what are those assets and which are the things that maybe aren't serving? And it's tempting to do very short-term things of just what to get the next income in. And we need to be doing that in such a crazy time, because you've got to be looking at how do you just survive through this time. But at the same time, be careful you're not neglecting or negating the longer term building these solid and planting these solid assets in your life. So that is pillar number 2.
Anne, we've got one question here that I think would be great from Darren. He says, when you speak of assets within a business, would you be using profit to acquire other businesses, or is this in your personal capacity? So great question. And we're going to get into in pillar number 4, when we talk about protection. You need to be having assets separate from your business completely. So you want to be investing in your own name. You can also be investing in other business kind of structures for asset protection, but be careful that you don't keep everything within one single entity, because there's, we're starting to get to some deeper sort of structural elements with that, because you can invest in your core business. Your business can own a share portfolio. It can own other asset classes, which is great. But you also want to be having a spread in terms of separating those assets out. Oh, got a cat that's coming to say hello. She's agreeing about separating your assets, because you also want to, if you've got to be considering you always want to know, what is your exit strategy for every asset? What is the opportunity to be able to leverage that off? If you're wanting to sell that business, are all the assets going to go with it? How are you going to split those out? But also from asset protection. So it's an and. You need to be taking profit out. And one of the things that really happens here, and I see over and over, and I can fall into it, is we can let the tax tail wag the dog. And we can be so obsessed with trying to avoid paying tax that we forget to create wealth. And we just got to really
be careful and go, what's going on here? And I see people spending so much time in these convoluted structures, and I want to get this offshore, that they've spent years just fucking around trying to avoid tax, and actually they could have created a shitload of wealth in that time. So just be aware of what's driving the choice of where you want to invest. And I used a few expletives there. I hope that was okay. Cool. So let's go to pillar number 3, which is all about debt. And really, so you'll see we're really hanging out now in the balance sheet, your personal balance sheet and your business balance sheet, your assets and your liabilities. This is where wealth and financial resilience is created, not in the income statement, not in that profit and loss, how money flows through, although that's really important. This is now the essence of ultimately wanting to see what is the net worth, what is the net worth of your business, and what is your personal net worth, because your net worth is your North Star. The net worth should be the thing that you're tracking in your personal life. Your net worth is the thing that you should know. What is your net worth target that will enable you to be financially free, where you have enough assets minus liabilities that you can live off forever in a sustainable way. So I didn't complete that aspect when I just shared some of my story. So I became financially free almost 15 years ago. And I've been and maintained my financial freedom through the 2008s, through the COVIDs, by having this broad base and solid, may I say, boring base of assets that work for me, by focusing on the net worth, knowing what that asset number needs to be minus my liabilities, that I can feed off at a specific rate that can maintain that capital mass. And so debt can be a really confusing and mixing thing in both business and personal life. And there are 3 kinds of debts. So you need to look at your balance sheet and go, what is my relationship with debt? And the first one is consumer debt. Consumer debt will absolutely devastate and destroy your financial well-being and wealth in your business and in your personal life, where this is generally expenditure that is driven from a need to have something now. And most often consumer debt is driven by not having a good money management system, not having allocations of money to short-term, medium-term, and longer-term spend needs, and real boundaries and frameworks about what you choose to do and don't do in your life. So consumer debt, you've got to be eliminating. And this is everything from that credit card to that overdraft. If there's a pattern of going into this, if there's car loans, it's a real radical stand that has to be taken here, because if you truly want to create financial resilience and live in a pattern of consumer debt, which has become so socially just acceptable, and you're almost a freak if you don't have consumer debt in this world. So I'd just say rather be a wealthy freak than just poverty with the masses. Because many people have got a lot of high consumption external success. We're finding right now in COVID, it's this element of being right on an edge with debt that has just driven them into a hole very, very quickly. So consumer debt is anything that doesn't have actually an asset behind it, something that's consumed and it's gone, and you basically sold your futures, your life force to have something now. So it is that modern day slavery. The second kind of debt is neutral debt. So neutral debt is where you have something that could clear that debt in the event you had to, you could sell that item. Now, typically for most people, the only neutral debt they have is a bond or a mortgage on a personal residence. Now, in many cases, in 2008, we saw even that going into negative equity, but typically you would hope that there can be borrowing against something that could be cleared. I say it's neutral debt because, as I already said, it's not an asset, so it sits below your wealth generating assets on your balance sheet. It doesn't get included in there, but it's not like consumer debt, because in theory you could neutralize that by selling one against the other. But the super exciting debt is where you start getting really savvy and you start understanding the power of leverage and the power of using money in a really leveraged way to control assets and give you access to opportunity. And when you can start using leverage really well in a business and in your personal life, this is where you can significantly increase your growth. You can significantly increase your returns, but you've got to understand the money. If you're not on top of it, if you don't have good management systems, if you're not on top of what's going on with returns and are you getting that return back on your investments, what are your overheads, how is it working, it can quickly go the other way. Great debt and leverage is like a fire. It can burn you, it can heat you and keep you safe. And so leverage can be used in each of these asset classes. You can use leverage to control and get ownership in different businesses, in direct shareholdings and in private equity. In property, as I said, property is the easiest asset class to get access to leverage, low cost money to control assets. Because the less money that you have in the deal and the more leverage you use, your rate of return goes up exponentially. But also in your business, it's just called leverage. But it's super important you're on top of this, because if you've got too much leverage, as we've seen now in COVID, when something goes the other way, leverage accelerates the down as well as the up. But I'd love you just to explore, what is your relationship with debt? Do you understand the different elements of it in your personal life and your business? And, you know, using debt powerfully was one of the things that really accelerated my financial freedom. I used it predominantly in property, and I owe loads, but it's all to control assets and not for consumption. And that's a real difference. And so, yeah, that is really the third pillar, to go, how do I use money, or do I use it against me? And what is that relationship and that leadership there? And right now, we're also going into low interest environments. So really strategically seeing, can you lock in loan facilities, negotiate around these, and what could you do to be able to utilize this for stability, not as like, oh, let me quickly get a loan to see me through, but strategically go, where am I going to use that money? Because if you can borrow money at 4%, 6%, and you can get it working and giving you a return of 12, 16, 18%, whatever, you're going to do that all day long. But it's really important that you then understand all the mechanisms that turn that. So let's see. Eleanor says, what is your opinion of an ideal long-term asset versus liability ratio? So this is really, it completely depends on each asset class. And you need to know that relation also with your business, in stocks and shares, in property. When you're in a growth state of wanting to build your portfolio in, say, investment property, typically a loan to value ratio of 70% is a growth one. You need to make sure that your numbers work in that. In a business, it's going to be completely unique to your business. You've got to understand your cash flow. You've got to understand the stability of that cash flow before you use that mechanism. So in each asset class and in equity, so I use leverage in equity only in margin trading, and only so I don't use any leverage in my long-term buy and hold shares, but I do use what is called margins in options trading, just because I'm a geek. And I don't go higher than a 30% what's called margin in options trading, same as leverage in a business, or gearing in a business, or leverage in property, all the same thing, because the pace at which it can go, because it can turn really fast, and you need to understand the pace of where that can turn, because that's where I say leverage accelerates up and down. So you just got to know that in your business. So that's pillar number 3, leadership and management, assets all day long. Understand debt and the power of leverage, and how are you using that. 4th pillar is protection. So now you want to wrap around this and go, do you actually understand how to protect yourself, your assets from life, the to be expected, unexpected events? Like, holy moly, did any of us do a scenario planning where a pandemic swept through our lives and our business? You know, where you're going outside and every night I look up and I go, oh shit, something actually is going on as we've all got our masks on. Who knew? You know, now if you go into a bank without a mask on, you'll be kicked out. Talk about a crazy world. And ask for their money. But protection has 3 key elements to it. The first layer of protection that you need to have in your life is cash. Having a cash safety net. You need a cash safety net in your personal life. You need a cash safety net in your business. Now, typically that should be between 3 and 9 months of your basic survival needs. What are your, and so this means you go back to pillar number 1. You need to know what your outflow is. What are your expenses? Do you have that operational buffer in your personal life? And this is not a big slush fund. This is not just the cost of your lifestyle. This is what do you need for bottom of Maslow's hierarchy to provide basic shelter, security, food, and access to opportunity. What are those stripped away costs? And then you want to build up a cash buffer so that you're not then having to either sell assets or go into debt or go into contraction when we're in fear and paralysis, because if all of our regulation units, our mental capacity is being triggered and going into fear and anxiety, we cannot be responding to life in the most empowering way that's actually going to look after us. Because if we're in complete anxiety and fear because we've gone off a financial cliff and we don't have that in place, we can't regenerate or build up. So this is about providing that stability and this catch net so we can pivot and make different options. And in the business, you need the same. And so many people are really seeing that impact of not knowing, one, how to quickly strip away overheads that aren't serving or outgoing costs, and what is that base operational buffer that you need in place, and making that as a choice. So cash is your first layer of your protection sort of mattress. The second is our insurances. And insurances are a super confusing thing, and or an area that many people either grossly overinsure, grossly underinsure, or just have the wrong insurances in place because they seem boring, or they've often fear-based decisions, or just, oh, whatever, let the broker come in. So in our personal life, it's really getting clear. Do you need life insurance? So here's just a real quick one. If you do not have dependents, and that actually need whatever income is coming in to be safe and stability, you do not need life insurance. Life insurance is not a fucking death bingo. It's not a, lottery ticket like, woohoo, when you pop your clogs, somebody gets a pay. That's not its role. Insurance is always there to cover a gap. If we truly understand that, if insurance is to cover a gap, and there to be a catch net in the event of an extreme event. So life insurance, one, you need to have dependents. If you don't have dependents that rely on you financially, you don't need life insurance. Secondly, once you've built up enough assets that can pay for the lifestyle for you and your dependents, you don't need life insurance. I haven't had life insurance for 15 years because, again, my assets become my insurance. Second one is then your access to ability for your health and well-being. So that would be looking like things like just medical. What is that? To catch you, not to pay for your gym membership. That's not a role of bloody insurance. So it's really clear of, are you getting what you need? And then getting really savvy about understanding it's a completely consumer product. It's a commodity price around. I get new quotes on my insurances every single year, and I negotiate like hell. Many people, this is one of the fastest areas all of you can save money in your personal life and your businesses. Treat them like commodities. Go and get and negotiate and save. Strip away what you don't need. Then it's protection of the things that give you your shelter, your access to opportunity. Homes, cars, truly understand what are the things you can reduce those costs, understand what those insurances are for. And then in your business, what insurances do you and don't you need? Public liability, quote around them and truly understand what is the risk, or have you just been sold a whole, swathe of insurances that you don't really need? How much do you need? And then price accordingly and be a really wealthy shopper in that to understand the value you're getting. So that's the second part, insurances that can catch you. The third part of your protection are your wealthy documents. In your personal life, this is making sure you've got a will in place. Please, please, please. If you are on this call and you don't have a will in place, please let that be your first action. Always say, if you really dislike your family, then die intestate, because it's one of the shittest things you can do to people you love. So preferably don't do that. But you need to have a will, and it's not about just when you have assets or loads of money, just put in place a simple will. You also need in place powers of attorney that can act for you financially, and health directive. In South Africa, that can often be called a living will. And yes, there's different debates about their legality, and South Africa's got some really interesting, weird rulings around the validity of power of attorney, but have them in place. So again, COVID has really made people think, like, if you can't, what do you want? And put in place the mechanisms to communicate that those you love, your partners, and in your business, get really clear. Think about, if you're in a partnership, what are you going to do? Do you have insurances against each other's lives? If you're in a partner or other partners, what do you want with that business in the event that you can't speak for yourself, maybe from a health event, or you die? What are the, get those things in place. And you're going, oh shit, you didn't know you were going to be speaking about death and end of life stuff as part of financial resilience. But part of financial freedom is also being free of that anxiety and worry. When we have the courage and the confidence to go and consider different scenarios and sit with them just with a clean isness of like, oh, well, what if I was not able to speak for myself? If I was in a coma or something like that, what would I want in place? Who would I want speaking for me? Who would I want making that choices? At end of life, what do I want? What don't I want? Let me put these things in place. When we have the ability to go there and be uncomfortable and sit with it and then share with those we love and put those things in place, we can then park it. There's no longer waking up at 3 a.m. worrying about, would the kids be okay? Or what about the partner or the business? Because we've put the things in place to support us. So your protection, and again, in your business, do you have in place the contracts you need? Do you have the legal structures in place that actually separate out your assets from your business from the other assets? So if something does happen in your business, you're able to solve that and it's separated from your other assets. And that comes right back to the decision of not having all of your investments reinvested in just one business, because that is super, super dangerous. So that is protection. And then the final fifth element is self-mastery. It's mindset. And you've got the amazing Gillian, and we love to talk a lot around this side. And for me, I think the most powerful journey of my own freedom journey and financial relationship with money, with life, and creating wealth was this continuous expansion of the inner game of wealth, the inner game of my own expansive mindset. Also managing me, truly getting to understand, how does this brain work? How does this mind work? What is the relationship with mind and body? What do I focus on? Do I have a real mechanism and processes and routines that help me be clear and focus on coming right back to what's important to me? Do I have a peer group and networks? I mean, so awesome to have EO and have your forum, have those around you. Who are the people that you can trust, that you can speak to, that help you keep your attention and focus in a way that is generative and expansive? Who are your coaches, your teachers, your mentors? What is the discipline and structures you have about what you choose to put into yourself, your body and your mind? How many people sit and switch on the TV first thing in the morning and they flick between Al Jazeera, CNN, BBC, and then they wonder why their nervous system's completely fucking frazzled and in a anxious space, versus what are we choosing to feed in that side? And so constantly expanding this element and having that curiosity and courage to just keep going to that edge and noticing, what am I avoiding? Why am I not going there? I think these are some of the most extraordinary capacities that we can keep expanding our relationship with life. Because at the end of the day, why I teach what I teach and why I'm so passionate about wanting to help people create this extraordinary relationship with money and financial base is, yes, go on that extraordinary holiday, have that yacht, have that Learjet, whatever else. But that's the fluff. At the end of the day, is I think when we can truly get this amazing base in place that supports us, that where we feel safe, protected, we have the ability to make choices with our time, our energy, we get this ultimate freedom, the freedom to be fully present with life, with all that it brings. And for me, at the end of the day, that is the wealthiest life we can have, where we are able to be fully present with its absolute heartbreaks and its heart joys, and be in it fully, so that at the end of the day, we can go back and go, I lived my life truthfully. And that's the 5 pillars.
Wow. I have got literally like tons of sticky notes, and I mean, that's just what I can fit in my hand, but that was unbelievable. You know, one of the things that I love and what you're able to do is to take a topic that I think a lot of people dread, partly because, like you say, it does take courage and curiosity to deal with these things, but also because sometimes it's just really boring. And if you see enough people speaking about this stuff, it's kind of out there and you can't even follow it. But I was absolutely captivated. And you have a great way of taking things and making them so simple. And you break it into, 5 pillars, and those 5 pillars have the steps and all of that kind of stuff. And I just really appreciate that you've taken the time here. And, for people, pleasure. I actually wanted to start off the session. I completely forgot. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your book. And do you have a copy there just to show people?
So if you want to see it, there we go. It's called The Wealth Chef. And this is the foundational, fundamental sort of elements and cores of that. You can also order it directly from my website called thewealthchefbook.com, and we'll email you we'll courier you a copy in South Africa. And also 100% of the royalties go to the Small Enterprise Foundation, which is about building up micro enterprises for pro-poor women, mostly in Limpopo and the Eastern Cape. But yeah, so the Wealth Chef book, I've got a pretty expansive YouTube channel teaching a lot about different investing, understanding the difference between trading and investing, all sorts of stuff there. It's all under the brand The Wealth Chef. But yeah, there was something else I was going to say, but it'll come back to me. Sorry, Gillian. Back to you.
All good. All good. Yeah, I mean, you started answering my next question, which is what would be the other platforms that people get hold of you? As you mentioned, the URL, I just posted it there on the chat. So if you can just confirm that is the correct URL.
Yes, thewealthchefbook.com is that. You can order the book directly from us. We'll get it out to you in South Africa if you want Kindle, or you're not in South Africa. There's all Amazon, it's all over the place. And yeah, connect with me on thewealthchef.com is the main blog site, YouTube channel, social media. And, I'm also sort of here. I just would really encourage a curiosity to maybe look at just one of these pillars and explore in both your business and in your personal life. What has this time shown you of vulnerability? Or even as I've spoken about some of these things, which are the areas that make you feel uncomfortable and maybe want to avoid, or go, yeah, but and, whichever those are, and maybe get curious about that. Because I certainly know that part of pillar number 5 is our freedom is generally through the door that we fear the most. And we want to resist or go, nah, we'll deal with that later. And so walk through that door first, just get curious and explore this. So Darren has said, do you feel that trust is the right way to go with building a wealth portfolio? So in terms of your structures, generally no. In South Africa, trusts, absolutely, there's so much legislation that has been reduced their ability to actually keep asset protection or tax efficiency. Testamentary trusts, in terms of your wills and looking, that's a different story. That's about, how do you want assets to be passed down or look after minors? That's a completely different story. But trusts from tax protection, asset protection, they tend to be great for the, so my dog's agreeing, forget the trust. They're great for the advisor who puts them in place, and the legal side, the costs of maintaining them, they tend to be poor from asset protection, plus your access to get leverage and all sorts of other things. I'm not saying they don't have a role, but I just see many, many people get so stuck in trying to get the right structure that, again, they forget to just start creating the habit of investing, the habit of building up. And generally in your own name, especially from tax protection or tax efficiency, you want to be maxing out things like tax deferred mechanisms, things that's retirement annuities, pensions, tax-free investment accounts. Now, we don't have huge allowances in South Africa with the tax investment accounts called tax-free savings accounts. Again, the wording is completely confusing, but with 33,000 start for your kids, start for you a year, invested in low cost index trackers. We haven't even got into just my passion around index trackers and what to invest in and how you can make the low cost elements really important. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to our investing in our business, there are only three things we can control. We can control costs. We've got to eliminate the overheads and costs. So when you're looking at your wealth creation, be careful of these heavy cost expensive structures. Everybody in South Africa is obsessed with getting an offshore account, which is fantastic. The financial industry wants you to do that because they make a shitload of money setting it up for you. But it's crap for you and your wealth. You can be investing in great international assets in multi-asset classes through a low-cost index tracker on a local platform. You do not need to do that. So costs, look at your costs, comes right back to management. Pillar number one, what are the costs in your business? Get savvy and get wealthy around your spend. Consistency. How are you consistently doing that investment? The consistency of application. There's a great trade investor called Jim Slater, who's one of his investing principles called the Zulu strategy. But he always says a mediocre strategy consistently applied will always outperform an amazing strategy inconsistently applied. So again, this comes to your investing. Do you have consistency? Do you have regular using rand cost averaging, dollar cost averaging? But are you consistent in your business as well about how you apply and build up on those assets? And the third one is the contribution. How much are you putting in? Your time, your energy, and your money into these things that you're wanting to build up. Is that also consistent? Where is your focus? Where is that going? Where are your resources, your time, your energy, and your money going? And that will create your life. So rather focus on those rather than the complexity of structures.
Thank you, Anne. Wow. Okay, we're just about out of time. I just want to repeat those 3 C's that you mentioned. Costs, consistency, and contribution. I think that was just an amazing way to end off with just another really powerful message in a very practical format. So like Anne said, I guess the next step is obviously visit Anne's resources. I highly recommend that and just get started. And yeah, just find out what is that one thing that you're going to get started on. All right, so we're out of time. I'm going to unmute everyone. I think that we can all just say a big thank you to Anne for spending your time. Anne's done this out of the goodness of her heart. And I really appreciate you, not only as a friend, but just all that you do for the world and all that you've done for us here today. Just a massive, massive thank you to you. So here we go. We're going to unmute everyone and everyone can say thank you and cheers.
Well, thank you.
And cheers.
So much.
And
Thank you.
Thank you,
So
Anne.
amazing to be here. And just
Thanks.
one last message, just separate who you are from your money stuff. Your money does not define you at all. And when we can separate our ego and our identity and our sense of well-being from our money stuff, we can just give it much better leadership. And so that's how we change the world. So thank you, gorgeous Gillian. Thank you, all of you, for giving me this opportunity. It's just so fantastic to share it with you.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to end the meeting now. Watch out for our next ones that we'll communicate out. We've got some exciting stuff lined up. Have everyone have a great day, and thank you for your time and your attention and your effort here today. Cheers, guys.